Good morning. My name is Douglas Griffin. This is my Sunday school class. We're in the book of Genesis. There's a lot of information today, a lot of information. We've been going through the book of Genesis from the beginning, chapter 1. We're now in chapter 45. And there's a lot of information. I hope you have a Bible. I would love for you to be reading along with me because it's a lot. Okay, so uh, Joseph's brother sold him into slavery. He basically tricked them once they showed up in Egypt into bringing their brother back, Benjamin. He was worried about Benjamin. Benjamin might be dead because the brothers hated him enough to kill him. So it wouldn't be shocking that they might have tried something on Benjamin. So he finds out Benjamin's alive and he's so excited. And in Genesis 45, verse 14, talking about Joseph, it says, "Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck, and he wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. And after that, his brothers talked with him." So they weren't sure this was really Joseph until he finally broke down. But the first person he's going to cry on is Benjamin. Oh, Benjamin. And we're going to talk about what this did to Benjamin's head. Um, all of the brothers passed down certain traits to their family members, and that was passed down, and that was passed down. They had a story and a perception about life. Oh, good. Thank you, Susie. I always just need to know if it's broadcasting, so I really appreciate when uh, I just need one person to say hello, and then I go, okay, it's working. So uh, each brother had a personality trait, and they taught their children and taught their children whatever story, whatever perception that they had on life. And you can just see it carried out through generations that family that all the ones in that line act the same as the grandfather, as the great great grandfather, because they were being told the same stories, and there was no television or magazines or anything else to influence them. The only thing they heard was the stories that their parents taught them, and they taught them to their kids. So Benjamin has a problem, and you'll see it throughout history. Um, God repeats these stories in the Bible so that we'll recognize them, because we are always wondering, am I hearing the voice of God? How do I know what God is saying to me? And so you can read the Bible and go, oh, that story there, that looks just like my situation. Oh, and there's one that's similar to my situation, and I see that God handled them kind of the same way. Okay, then that's probably what God is going to do in my situation, you know. So you can see the repetitiveness, and we're just going to study Benjamin right now. So here's the problem with Benjamin, because Benjamin became a real problem. Uh, in Genesis chapter 35, and I just hope again that you have a Bible and can read along, but if you don't, it's okay. In Genesis chapter 35, verse 18, it says, "And so it was as her soul was departing, for she died." And we're talking about Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin's mother, that she called his name. So she's giving birth to Benjamin, and she called his name Ben Oni, which just means the son of my sorrow, the son of my pain, the son of my death. But his father called him Ben Hameen, the son of my right hand. So you've got two conflicting things going on. Benjamin is named first by his mother. And please know that the other kids know what his original name was. That's why we know what his original name was, because these stories got passed down. Please know that Benjamin was reminded, you know, your mom named you. So, you know, you killed your mother, basically. You know that she died giving birth to you. And that does something to you psychologically. Did something to Benjamin, we'll see. Uh, But also, his father, though, on the other hand, said, "No, you're the son of my right hand. I need my right hand, and I need you, and you're important." So, uh, Benjamin goes up with kind of two messages. We'll see which one wins for a time being. In Genesis chapter 43, when all the brothers have gone down, but the father said, "No, Benjamin can't go. Benjamin's special. You can all go. Maybe you'll all die. I don't know, but Benjamin's going to stay." That sends a message to Benjamin. I'm really important. Then the brothers come back and said, "No, we've got to have Benjamin. He will only do this if Benjamin's with us." And of course, the father is like, "No, don't take Benjamin." And Benjamin's like, "No, don't take me." And so, but Judah says, send the lad in Genesis 43, verse 8. Then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you also, our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. I'll make sure. So Benjamin is getting the message. This whole thing hinges on you. You are the most important thing. Father saved you for a while from having to go down there, but you must go down. So he goes down there. Uh, and Joseph treats him differently. Now they don't know that it's Joseph; they think it's the Pharaoh. So when they go down, the Pharaoh, the head of state, treats Benjamin differently from everybody else. In Genesis 43, verse 34, it says, "Then he took servings to them from before him, so food servings, right? But Benjamin's serving was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry, but Benjamin's going like, wow, I really am important. Whoever this man is, he gave me 5 times as much food as everybody else. They were all starving, and look at me." And this is sending a message to Benjamin again. People, we learn a perception of the world, and you pass it on to your kids, and you pass it on to your kids, and they pass it on to their kids, and they pass it on to their kids. And you can see it repeated in the Bible. Again, that generations later, you can see the same traits happening because they're learning what their forefathers taught them. Then Benjamin is caught with the cup. Now Benjamin didn't steal the cup, but you're the thief, and he's like, oh no, right? Because not so Benjamin's got 2 messages. The mom said, I died because of you. You're the son of my death pangs. And the father said, no, you're my right hand. You're the most important person in the world. And so Benjamin's getting different messages from the world. Benjamin, you stole the cup. Like, oh no, I'm going to be thrown in jail. But Judah pleads for him. In Genesis 44, verse 31, it will happen when he sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die, talking about the father, which is like Benjamin's hearing all this. Benjamin's standing right there. If we don't bring Benjamin back, if we don't see him with us, our father is going to die. So your servants will bring down the gray hair of your servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. Is that what you're going to do? For your servant became surety, like Judah saying, I became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, that I shall bear the blame before my father forever. So now, therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad as a slave to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. So Judah saying, I will sacrifice. Now Benjamin's hearing this thinking, wow, Judah really loves me because he's going to give up his life for me. Judah's giving up his life for Benjamin. Look what, wow, Judah's rescuing me from this because Benjamin's scared. Don't forget that earlier they came back without Simeon. Didn't know if they were going to see Simeon again. In fact, they let it go. The father said, oh, well, you're not taking Benjamin down there, so I guess Simeon's going to have to stay. So Benjamin knows that it's very possible they could leave him down there and go on back home. So he's frightened out of his mind. And because the Pharaoh, it's really Joseph, but the Pharaoh saying, no, he's got to stay. He's going to pay. He's guilty, right? Even though like nothing they could do could talk him into it until they heard this story, till he hears the story. Joseph hears the story of how the father said about him, Joseph, oh no, I already lost one son and he's dead. And when Joseph hears that, it's like, oh wow, he thought I was dead. That's why he didn't come and rescue me. That didn't come look for me. My father thought I was dead. Okay, it's like he forgave his father, and that opened his eyes, right? So now he realizes, oh, God did all of this, and I need to cooperate. So Joseph, who's been spoiling Benjamin, Judah, who's been rescuing Benjamin, not spoiling him, Judah's not spoiling him. There's 2 different things going on. One spoiling him and lavishing him. Judah's rescuing him and giving his life for him. He finally, like the scripture I read you, 40, verse 43, I'm sorry, in verse 40, in chapter 44, 45, then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept and cried, oh, Benjamin, and you're important. And then they all realized who this is. Oh, this is Joseph. Okay. So Benjamin's getting these messages. You are the most important person in the world. Jacob comes down. He begins to prophesy over all the sons. I'm going to die soon. Let me prophesy over them. He prophesies Reuben. Simeon prophesies prophesies over them in order of birth. Listen to what he says about Judah, which I'd read before. Genesis chapter 49, the first part of verse 8 said, Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. He didn't say this about anybody else, but he says, you have qualities your brothers will have to compliment you because this is who you are now. He wasn't that before when Judah and Tamar had their little baby Perez. Well, they had twins, but the Perez is the one that carries on the family name. Judah could care less about Tamar until he found out what he had done and that his sin was exposed, and this changed him. And now he's this person who's very giving and loving, and Judah's going to support, right? And I'll give my life for Benjamin. So he says, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. The scepter, in verse 10, shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. So this the anointed one that's been spoken about, I think it's going to come through Judah. Now that's how we understand what it's saying. They didn't quite understand what he meant by that, but I guess Judah's going to be in charge of a long time. He's going to have a scepter and be a king and give out the laws. And okay, so the brothers are trying to take this in. Here's what he says about Benjamin. This is what the father says about Benjamin, who he loves. Benjamin, oh, Benjamin, you're my favorite. In Genesis chapter 49, verse 27, he says, Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. Now, this is not, you should have said Benjamin is a cutie pie or something, but Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, your youngest son. So Judah, everybody's going to praise you, but Benjamin, he's a ravenous, like he can't get enough, right? Which happens sometimes when you spoil people. Joseph spoiled him. This whole thing is centered around Benjamin and how important he is to the success of the mission. And Benjamin's saved everybody's life by just being alive. And so he says, Benjamin is ravenous wolf. In the morning, he will devour the prey, but at night he shall divide the spoil. So there's two different things. In the morning, he's going to, and a lot of times, when they say in the morning, they mean in the early part of his existence. At night, in the latter part of his existence. It doesn't literally mean in the morning he does this, and then 12 hours later he does something different. It just at the beginning, in the dawning of his life, he will devour the prey. But at night, so he's devouring it by himself, selfishly. That's what he's devouring it. I mean, but at night he divides the spoil, he shares. So he's going to change. There'll be a change in Benjamin. Now, when finally, so they spend time in Egypt, and Moses comes and delivers the children of Israel out. And there's 12 tribes now. They've grown to about 600,000 people, which would mean each tribe would average about 50,000. Some tribes had 70,000, some had 30. They all were different sizes, but each tribe averaged about 50,000. So 200 years later, 3 generations later of people, they're finally leaving, and they're dividing up the land. Once they go into the promised land, where are you going to go? You're going to go up to San Francisco, and you're going to go to Sacramento, and you're going to be over in LA, and you're in San Diego, right? They're dividing it up. In Joshua chapter 18, verse 11, it says, now the lot of the tribe of the children of Benjamin came according to their families. So by lot, which is kind of funny because actually they knew, I think it was by lot was when you were going to find out where yours was, because they already knew where everybody's going to go. But at what point do you find it out? So by lot, when it got to the tribe of Benjamin, according to their families, the territory of their lot came out between the children of Judah and the children of Joseph. So these are the two people. Joseph spoiling Benjamin and crying over him and giving him 5 times as much. Judah giving his life for Benjamin, right? So these that's right where he's right in between. And if you look on the map of Israel, Benjamin is right. It's right next to Judah and right near Bethlehem. And Ephraim, which is one of the Joseph's sons, because Joseph had 2 sons, Manasseh and Joseph, and they both got a lot. They both, Manasseh and Ephraim, Joseph's sons, both got something because Reuben and Simeon didn't get anything. So so Joseph got two. So it's a long story. But anyway, so here's Judah, Benjamin's right on top, and then there's Ephraim right there. Okay, so he's surrounded by his two favorite brothers who protected him. Here's what that did to to Benjamin. Here's the crazy thing, because I'm telling you, they spoiled him so much. Dottie, oh, Joshua Shaw. Well, I hope you stay and listen. You enjoy it. I was just saying hi. Um, well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Okay, you're asking questions. Um, okay, so but first let's just talk about Benjamin. So in the book of Judges, in chapter 19, now there's no king. Once they moved into the promised land, again, the 12 tribes, they all spread out, right? And there's no king. They just have judges who were making decisions because God was wanting to be their king. God is wanting them to come to him. And they know if you have a king, you're going to go to the king. You're not going to learn to go to me. It's like having a pastor and you always just depend on the pastor for everything. You don't think you can pray yourself, and everybody can pray. Everybody, God hears everybody. He doesn't hear the pastor more than you. Or having a boss, or having just somebody that you're just depending on too much. And so initially God says, no king, we'll have judges to settle disputes, but I want you to learn you're on your own, have a relationship with me. So let's look at what Benjamin did. So in Judges chapter 19, verses 1 through 4, it says, it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite staying in the remote mountains of Ephraim. So remember, we got Ephraim, then Benjamin, then Judah. So this Levite, this priest, he's staying in Ephraim. He says he took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. So he skipped over Benjamin and went south down to Judah. Bethlehem, and Bethlehem is right there. But his concubine played the harlot against him and went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah. Verse 3, then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. So that's what you get for, and this, by the way, again, this is a Levite. This is a priest. But so he chooses a harlot for his wife and is so shocked when she's not faithful. But anyway, the husband arose, went after her to speak kindly to her to bring her back, having his servant and a couple of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house. When the father of the young woman saw him, he was glad to meet him. Now his father-in-law, the young woman's father, detained him, and he stayed with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there for 3 days. He was supposed to have gone back up to Ephraim, right? Again, reminding you that Benjamin, the city, the county of Benjamin, is in between Ephraim and Judah, right there. So he's wanted to go back to Ephraim because that's where he lived, this Levite priest. But his father talked him into stay. Finally, he leaves, and he should have left early in the morning so he could have made the trip and gotten all the way there at night. But the father delayed him again, so he leaves later in the day and ends up. It's nightfall, and he's only made it to Benjamin. He's made it out of Judah to Benjamin, but he hasn't made it up to Ephraim yet. And it's nightfall, and it's like we got to find somewhere to sleep. So verse 14, it says, and they passed by, and they went the way, and the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. So, and I just want to remember that city. Gibeah is this very important city in the little town, the little country of Benjamin. I'm calling it the country, but Benjamin's territory. So when he went in, he sat down in the open square of the city, for no one would take them into his house to spend the night. No hotels, no motels. That's why they were eventually invented, because if you traveled somewhere, you just had to go to a city. If you didn't make it to where you were going by nightfall, wherever you were, you either just slept on the ground or you hoped that somebody would take you in. So he's in the city square. Nobody's taking him in. He's just like, somebody see me, please, and give me a place to stay, me and my wife. Just then an old man, verse 16, came in from his work in the field at evening, who was also from the mountains of Ephraim, right? Lived up north. And he was staying in Gibeah, whereas the men of the place were Benjamites. So yes, we know they're Benjamites. That's where they are, Benjamin's area. The Benjamites were crazy. So verse 27, so he takes him in. says, as they were enjoying themselves, suddenly certain men of the city, perverted men, surrounded the house and beat on the door. And they spoke to the master of the house, the old man, who takes this priest in, right? This Levite takes him in with his concubine, saying, bring out the man who came to your house that we may know him carnally. Well, it doesn't say carnally. That's the King James added that in. That we may know him. Okay. So the old man saying, no, go back home. It's late. No, we're not going to leave. He says, I have daughters. Take my daughter, but don't take this man. No, we want the man. So verse 25, it says, but the men would not heed him. So the man, the Levite, took his concubine and brought her out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until morning. And when the day began to break, they let her go. So he says, here, take my concubine. Shut the door. Whatever happens, happens. So verse 27 says, when the master arose in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went out to go to his way, there was his concubine fallen at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. They had abused her until she died. So the man's upset. Oh, I can't believe they did this. Who would have known that this could have happened? I can't believe it. So he's very upset. In verse 29, of course, I'm being sarcastic because of duh. But anyway, verse 29 says, and when he entered his house, he took a knife, laid hold of his concubine, and divided her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. So chopped off her arms, her legs, her neck, right? And he mailed them FedEx to all over, right? So everybody, so you're in the town of Issachar, or you're in the country of Reuben. Well, Reuben, they're way up there. Anyway, or wherever you are, Dan, Asher, Donder, Blitzen, whatever you get in the mail a piece of this woman's body. So of course they're like, what is going on? Who chopped up some woman? And they gather together to hear the story. So in Judges 20, the next chapter, verse 2, it says, and the leaders of all the people and all the tribes of Israel presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. So like all the men came from all, now there's 600,000 total, but 400,000 of them all get together. And what are we going to do about this? And they find out what happened. And the guy tells the story. They raped her and I can't believe it. And okay. So in Judges chapter 20, verse 12, it says, and the tribes of Israel sent men throughout all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what is this wickedness that has occurred among you? Because no one was crazy like Benjamin. And the Benjamites were crazy. Okay. And because Benjamin passed on this story about how incredible they are and how people gave their lives for them. And that makes you think you can do anything and get away with it. And it's okay. You can just, because, you know, I'm incredible. And so any thought that occurs to me, I can do, and who's going to say anything? So they ask, what is this wickedness that's occurred among you? Verse 13 says, now therefore deliver up the men, the perverted men who are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove the evil from Israel. But the children of Benjamin would not listen. The voice of their brethren, the children of Israel. Instead, the children of Benjamin gathered together from the cities to Gibeah to go to battle against the children of Israel. So Gibeah is this important city, and this is where the crime happened. They came from all over Benjamin, right? And they gathered in the city of Gibeah. And they're going to go to fight with their brothers. They're going to go fight against 400,000 people. And from their cities at that time, it says in verse 15, the children of Benjamin numbered 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah. How you add in however many people were in Gibeah, another 500 people. Okay, so there's 26,000 of them against 400,000 of their brothers. But somehow Benjamin thinks, oh, we can take them, because they've been told they're invincible. That's what's been passed down, right? Benjamin, you rescued us. You're incredible. You're okay. So now here's an interesting story. Among 16, it says, among all the people were 700 select men. So of the 26,000, there were 700 select men who were left-handed, and everyone could sling a stone at a hair's breadth and not miss. So they were great with a sling, right? They could sling a stone. I will tell you that we'll find out later that these are the descendants of these people, and people who taught David how to do his slingshot, because he lived right near them. Okay, so 700 of them were incredible with slingshots, but the other 26,000 had swords. So verse 18 says, and the children of Israel arose and went up to the house of God to inquire of God. And they said, which of us should go up first to battle against the children of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah first. Because Judah, I trust Judah to try to talk to Benjamin first and calm them down. And Judah, I trust, right? Judah has a special relationship with Benjamin. So Judah, you go first, you lead everybody. So now they ask God, they're asking God the wrong question because they didn't ask God, should we go? When should we go? They just asked God, who should go first? Well, Judah should go first. Okay. So they went up, and somehow the 26,000 people of Benjamin, who were just crazy people, defeated that first wave. Now there's 400,000 of them. They didn't defeat 400,000 of them, but they defeated the first wave of people that they sent in. So in verse 23, it says, and the children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, like, oh my God, Benjamin kicked our butts. How's that possible? And asked counsel of the Lord, saying, oh, shall I again draw near for battle against the children of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, yes, go up against them. So now at least they asked, should they go? They still didn't ask when. So they went up, got defeated again, came back. Then all the children, and that is all the people, all the children of Israel, that is all the people went up and came to the house of God and wept. And they sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening. So finally they just, now fasting doesn't make God do something. It quiets us so we can hear from God. We're not distracted. We're fasting the television or books or video games or our phone or food or whatever. And you're just saying, I'm just spending time meditating because I can hear God, because you want to hear what God's telling you to do, because God's only going to bless what he has designed us to do. So if we come up with a plan and we try to fast in order to get God to do our plan, it doesn't work. But if we fast long enough from whatever to clear our minds, perhaps we can hear what God's plan is, because he's always going to bless his plan. So they fasted all day until evening. Verse 28, again, I'm in Judges chapter 20. It says, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before, saying, shall I yet go again out to battle? So they went up before God. So yeah, you're going to go battle against the children of my brother Benjamin, or shall we just stop? Because this is the time number 3. And the Lord says, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hand. Oh, they waited long enough to find out when God was going to give them the victory, because God was always planning to give them the victory that day. He would have said, wait 3 days and go up. He says that a lot, but they just went up and then came back. Okay, are we supposed to go? Yes, you're supposed to go. Okay, and they went up again and came back. Should we go again? Yes, tomorrow. Oh, duh. So they finally went up, and it says, so all who fell of Benjamin, so they went and God gave them the victory. Listen to this. This is verse 46 of Judges chapter 20. So all who fell of Benjamin that day were 25,000 men who drew the sword. Now remember, they only had 26,000 to begin with. They lost 25,000 in one day. Now they had lost a total of 1,000 the first 2 days, like 500. Then they lost 25,000 in one day. So all those first men who drew the sword, gone, right? There's only 26,000 of them. They lost 25,000 in one day. 25, they were these men of valor, right? But it says in verse 47, 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. So remember, there were those 700 guys who were left-handed. Now, in this world, they made you use your right hand. You shook hands with people with your right hand. Anything you're going to do official, you did with your right hand, because your left hand is the hand you used when you went to the bathroom. So you did everything right-handed. The left-handers used to have to use the right and left because they were left-handed, and so they could use their left hand and just shock everybody, because most people have been trained to use the right hand the whole time. So of those 700, there's 600 left, those people who were good with slingshots. So they go to the rock of Rimmon. Now, in Judges chapter 21, the next chapter, verse 6, it says, the children of Israel grieved now for Benjamin their brother, because they'd killed all of them except for 600. And they said, one tribe is cut off from Israel today. What shall we do for wives for those who remain, seeing we have sworn by the Lord that we will not give them our daughters as wives? There's only 600 of them left. So what are we going to do? Because we said, we're not going to have it. They made a vow. So they got 600 men left. We don't know. Well, I guess 600 men. So there's 600 men left. What are we going to do? They must continue, but we vowed not to give them our wives. So they looked among themselves and they said, who didn't show up? Who did not show up when we told everybody to come and get in this fight? Oh, I know who didn't show up. The people who lived on the east side of the Jordan. Reuben and Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh, half the tribe of Manasseh, they didn't show up to fight because they live on the east side, and we sent them an invitation. They act like they didn't get it, but they got it. So they decided, verse 10 says, so the congregation sent out their 12,000 men of their most valiant men, and they commanded them, saying, go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead. And that's Jabesh Gilead is the capital city of that on the east side of the Jordan, where Reuben and Gad and that half tribe of Manasseh lived. So these are people who never crossed the Jordan. They never came. They did to live with God in the promised land. They're staying on the east side of the Jordan. So go up there, 12,000 people, kill all of them. Verse 11 says, and this is the thing that you shall do. You shall utterly destroy every male and every woman who has known a man intimately. So kill every man, and this time even kill every woman who's known, and I don't know, they're just crazy. Okay, who know a man intimately. So they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man intimately, and they brought them into the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. So they brought them back to Ephraim. So I remember it was Ephraim and then Benjamin and then Judah. Those three were right in a row, right on top of each other. So we've got 600 guys left. They found 400 virgins. And so they said, then the whole congregation sent word to the children of Benjamin, who were at the rock of Rimmon, hey, come on down, and announced peace to them. We're no longer mad at you, you 600 guys who are left. So Benjamin came back at that time, and they gave them the women whom they had saved alive of the women of Jabesh Gilead, and yet they had not found enough of them, because they only found 400. There was 200 of them left. So in verse 20, it says, therefore they instructed the children of Benjamin, saying, go lie in wait in the vineyards and watch. So now they're in Ephraim. And just when the daughters of Shiloh come out to perform their dances, then come out from the vineyards, and every man catch a wife for himself from the daughters of Shiloh, and then go and live back in Benjamin. So, hey, Benjamin, here you can have, just when these women come out and do their yearly dance, just wait in the bushes and then jump out and grab them. But that's Benjamin. That's Benjamin. So this has been, and there's only 600 guys left, right? There's 400,000, each tribe has 50,000. There's literally 600 Benjamites left. So years pass, right? And finally the children of Israel says, we need a king because something's wrong with us. We need a king. And so God said, okay, I'm going to give you a king. Now, in 1 Samuel chapter 9, verse 3, says, now the donkeys of Kish, that's the guy's name. His name is Kish. Saul's father were lost, and Kish said to his son Saul, please take one of the servants with you and arise and go look for the donkeys. So Saul goes out, he's looking for the donkeys, and then this prophet Samuel runs into him, not by coincidence, and says, hey, you're the new king. And verse 21 says, and Saul answered and said, am I not a Benjamite, of the smallest of the tribes of Israel, and my family the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin? Why didn't you speak like this to me? Me? What? Okay, so so here's a Benjamite, right? 200 years later, God say, I'll pick a Benjamite to be your king, because the Benjamites have a problem. 1 Samuel, verse 15, he sends Saul out on his mission. And that's why Saul said, we're the smallest. Yeah, because we started from 600 guys. So thus says the Lord of hosts in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 2, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed him in the way when he came up from Egypt. And they did. Amalek was terrible. They had just escaped from slavery 200 years in Egypt, and Amalek is attacking them instead of feeling sorry for them. So now go and attack Amalek. And listen, he's telling you, this is when God tells you something specific, do specifically what God tells you, because he's saying it that way for a reason. You can't, well, I know God said do this every Monday and Wednesday, but I'm going to do it on Thursday because you can, whatever God says, do. So he says, now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them, but kill both man and women, infant and nursing child, ox and sheep, camel, everybody, kill everybody. He's telling them to do that. Verse 7 of 1 Samuel 15. And Saul attacked the Amalekites from Havilah all the way to Shur. Like, just attack them from north to south, which is east of Egypt. And he also took Agag, king of the Amaleks, alive. So the king, Agag, he left him alive and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But I'm going to just save the king. So let's just fast forward a couple hundred years. The children of Israel have been uh, taken into bondage, and King and Ahasuerus, which is, we would say, Artaxerxes, that's the Greek version of it. After all these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman. Now, Haman is the guy who plots to kill all of the Jews because they've all been captured, and Haman has come up with the way. He's the Hitler of his time. He's come up with the way, I know how to kill all of the Jews. So after these things, and this is after Esther chapter 3, verse 1, after these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman. He's the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. Anyway, he's descended from King Agag, Agag, and he's an Agite. And God had said, kill all of them, and Saul the Benjamite, because Benjamites do what they want. That's the problem with Benjamites. I'm special. I'm important. I can do whatever I want. I didn't listen to God, argued with God. Well, God didn't mean, you know how God is. So here Haman's alive and is in power and ready to kill all the Jews because Ahasuerus promoted him to this position. And verse 5 says, when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage, Haman was filled with wrath because everybody's got to bow down to me and bow down to the king. And Mordecai, who's one of these Jews, he's not doing what he says. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. So instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews. Now, the people of Mordecai were a little crazy. So you don't jump on Mordecai because his people will come after you. But you can come up with a plan to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai, right? So he's a Jew. Those are his people. But specifically, his particular family was a little crazy. So in Shushan, in Esther chapter 2, verse 5, it says, in Shushan, the citadel, which is the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. So Mordecai was a Benjamite, related to Saul, right? And because his father was Kish, Saul's father was Kish. Saul was told to kill Agag and all the Amalekites, and now there's a great grandson of Agag named Haman, who's ready to kill all the Jews. And Mordecai, just by coincidence, just happened to be a Benjamite. Now, Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who'd been captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah. So at this point, not only had the northern Israel been captured, but also Jeconiah had been captured, and he's with Judah, which is another story I'll get into next week. So whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And Mordecai had brought up Hadassah, which is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father nor mother. And the young woman was lovely and beautiful. And when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So Esther is also of the tribe of Benjamin. And in Esther chapter 4, verse 14, Mordecai comes to her and says, this is your chance we can get Haman. Haman has come up with this decree and all the Jews are going to be killed. But if you can just get in to see the king, Esther, because he thinks you're really lovely, then he will hear you and maybe you can talk him out of, following Haman's plan. And she's like, but I can only see the king if he calls for me. And if I just walk in on him, he might kill me. And he says in verse 14, for if you remain completely silent, though, at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. God will use somebody else because he's already said that the Jews are going to live until Shiloh comes. We know they'll be there for that long, and Shiloh certainly hasn't come yet. So God didn't say what he's hoping to happen. He's already said what he's seen happen. So if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it because we're not all going to be destroyed. He says, but you and your father's house will perish because you've been disobedient to God. You didn't take advantage of this time to make up for this wrong. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? This may be exactly why God has you in the position. Yes, it was because you're a Benjamite, and the Benjamins were supposed to have killed Agag, and now he has the opportunity to kill Agag's great grandson, and so the Benjamites do it. Esther and Mordecai. So God knows what He's doing, and there's a reason He'll say, cut all that off totally, or stop doing that complete, or what when you say, oh, I can do a little bit. No, that little bit's going to kill you. So if God's saying something, He's doing it for a reason. Now back to Saul, the Benjamite. So we're going back in time a couple hundred years. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 26, Saul has been pleading, like, why are you mad at me just because I didn't kill King Agag and because I'm not doing what God says to do? And verse 26, it says, Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. You are the worst because God gives you specific instructions and you think you don't have to listen to them, which is a trait of Benjamin. Okay. Then verse 34, then Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house at Gibeah. And that's Gibeah. You recognize Gibeah. Gibeah is where they raped that woman. Gibeah is where tribe of Benjamin, plotted to kill all of his brothers. I'm going to kill 400,000 of them. Saul lived in Gibeah. So I'll go back to Gibeah. Bless his heart. Okay. So it says now, oh, how interesting. I don't want to go. Okay. Now, at the same time, we know that David is being born, right? That David is there. He's from Judah. So, and Samuel, by the way, is of the tribe of Ephraim. He's not a Levite. He's a prophet. So you're using Joseph to anoint Benjamin, the wrong person. And now we're going to use a relative of Joseph. He's anointed the correct person, the descendant of Judah. Now, Saul, who's the Benjamite, is trying to kill Judah. Now, way early, Judah's the one that rescued Benjamin, right? Judah said, no, don't kill Benjamin. Take me, not him, right? Now Saul's trying to kill David when he finds out that he's being replaced by him. And Samuel 19, verse 11, Saul also sent messengers to David's house to watch him and to kill him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, if you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you'll be killed. You need to get out of here. So he leaves. Now, he's in hiding. Here's an interesting thing in 1 Chronicles chapter 12. And this is why we can read the Old Testament, because once you know the stories, when you're hearing these names and things, you go, oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, yeah, right? So in 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, David's on the run from Saul, from the Benjamite. Now, these were the men who came to David at Ziklag while he was still a fugitive from Saul, the son of Kish. And they were among the mighty men, helpers in the war. So these are the men who came to help David. Armed with bows, using both the right hand and the left in hurling stones and shooting arrows with the bow, they were of Benjamin. So those guys who were still really good at hurling stones with their left hands, they were good friends with David. Taught him how to do the slingshot when he was a kid, and that's how he defeated Goliath. So they came, those guys, those descendants, because you teach your. Again, all the left-handers were, so all the right-handers were dead. There only were left-handers that were left alive, and they had kids, and they had kids, and they had kids. So they're still teaching their kids how to do the slingshot. So they come and they minister to David. Now, in 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 4, once this Benjamite had been killed, it says, then the men of Judah came there, and they anointed David king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, the men of Jabesh Gilead were the ones who buried Saul. So they're in two places, right? Jabesh Gilead. They were the guys who, when they got the 400 virgins and gave them to the 400 guys, they stayed up in Jabesh Gilead. And then the other guys, those last 200 guys, they lived in Ephraim, which is right near Bethlehem where David lived. And so half the men came and helped with David, and the other ones, their descendants, they're the ones who buried Saul. Now, we're going to go way down to the next and final Benjamite. In Acts chapter 7, verse 58, the last part, Stephen is pleading and trying to preach to these Pharisees. And the Pharisees aren't having it because they think that they're really holy. You can't tell us. We know Jesus had problems with the Pharisees. You Pharisees think you know everything. Yes, we do know everything. And we know you're wrong. So So Stephen's trying to preach to them. It says, and they stoned him in verse 58, the last part of it. And the witnesses laid down their clothes at the feet of a young man named Saul. So Saul did not kill Stephen, but he was there, and because he was too young. Here, you hold my coat. I'm gonna go get him. Right? Hold my earrings. So Saul's holding all their stuff, but then Saul took over. Very next chapter, in chapter 8, verse 3 says, and as for Saul, he made havoc of the church, entering every house, dragging off men and women, committing them to prison. So once Saul got into it, he knew he was right, and all those Christians were wrong. So he's on his way to Damascus in chapter 9, when suddenly this bright light shines around him. In Acts chapter 9, verse 4 says, then he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Why are you persecuting me? Now, in Philippians chapter 3, verse 5, Paul's bragging to himself, and he's saying, I was circumcised on the 8th day. I'm of the stock of Israel. I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. So Paul's of the tribe of Benjamin. And Jesus, who's of Judah, is saying, why are you persecuting me again? Saul was persecuting David and never learned his lesson. Saul is like, no, I don't want to give up being king. I'm going to kill Judah, right? I'm Benjamin and I'm hating Judah because God chose Judah. And God's like, I've chosen everybody for a purpose. I've just chosen Judah for this purpose. But I was like, no, I don't want. So, and this is what Paul's doing. No, don't you tell me I'm wrong. Don't you tell me my religion is wrong. I'm going to get you. I'll stop you. And Jesus, who's from the tribe of Judah, has to stop him and say, why are you doing this? You're persecuting me just like your ancestors are always persecuting Judah. When Judah's just here to save you and rescue you. Judah's here to rescue. That's what the Shiloh will come through Judah, and the Savior's here to rescue us. And when we act out, I don't want to listen to God, I want to do my own thing. God doesn't know what he's talking about. We are Benjamin. We are Benjamin because we let the flesh rule us sometimes and just do crazy stuff and go off and scream at this, and I hate you, and or just crazy stuff. We're Benjamin who think we can do anything we want. Nobody can tell me what to do. Judah can, and Jesus can, God can, and he sends Judah to us. He sends someone from the tribe of Judah to rescue us from ourselves. Judah rescued Benjamin from himself. And Saul, why are you persecuting me? And Paul's realizing, I was of the tribe of Benjamin, in just Philippians is my last part. He says, I was a Hebrew of the Hebrews. Concerning the law, I was a Pharisee. Concerning zeal, persecuting the church. Concerning the righteousness which is of the law, blameless. I thought I was incredible. But what things were gained to me then, these I have counted loss for Christ. All that I was holding on to, I've got to be right, and I've got to be, and don't you tell. I said, I don't need all of that. I counted it loss for Christ. Once he spoke to me, Saul heard. I'm right, and please know that Saul, the apostle, is named after his relative Saul, the first king of Israel. That first king didn't hear, but the second Saul did hear, and he lost himself, and he stopped trying to hang on to everything he was holding on to. Because Benjamin can be spoiled, and that's what I'm saying. We're Benjamin, and Benjamin can think the world, I can do whatever I want, but it doesn't. It destroys us. Benjamin got destroyed from letting themselves just do whatever they wanted. We need Christ. We need that line of the tribe of Judah to rescue us from ourselves. So he said, yes, indeed, I count all things lost for excellence of the knowledge of Christ, Jesus my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things and count them as rubbish that I may gain Christ. So God is always teaching us a lesson through Benjamin, and Judah, and he just repeats himself. I'm fascinated by the story that God is able to weave over 2,000 years, and it's so consistent. And so Benjamin is the one that thinks the world revolves around him because he got that message. You're so important. Judah says, I will sacrifice for you to rescue you. And he's been doing it all along. Judah God sent Judah in first when the tribe of Benjamin went crazy and thought they were going to fight everybody. Uh, God sent David from the tribe of Judah to Saul to sing for him and calm him down and to bless him. But Benjamin's like, no, no. And then finally, Jesus from the tribe of Judah comes to Benjamin and says, why do you keep fighting me? Stop fighting me. Just let it go and let me take charge of your life. Let me rescue you from yourself. So it's anyway, just interesting about Benjamin. We will go on to the next verse next week in Genesis. And thank you so much for listening in. We're in the book of John on Wednesday nights at 7, and then we'll be continuing next week in Genesis. Okay, let's see, save, and that says create. Bless my heart. Okay, well, there's no way to end it, so you're just stuck. You have to keep, oh, there it is, in live video.